Good evening, sir.
What's
How are
up,
you?
buddy?
It is lonely down here in this basement without you, man. I'll tell you that.
So it is lonely in this very echoey room. For those who don't know, I just moved, and I've got my laptop propped up on two plastic boxes because I can't find the nuts for my table,
Right.
so it's all wobbly. So I've lost my nuts.
Hey, we've got I'll tell you right now, Banks, and welcome to all the new listeners right now. Obviously, with some big announcements early in the week here from the Shane Hazel campaign for Senate. And obviously, this is Banks Wise. If you guys don't know Banks Wise ran my campaign. He is now running Matt Gertler's U.S. House campaign out of the 9th District, which he had run Matt Gertler's campaign out of, I don't know, what is Matt Gertler's district up there? The
District 8,
District 8.
the State House.
For the state house representative up there. And so Banks is my other 50% on this show, and between the two of us right now, we are just running a million miles a minute, and we didn't have enough time on Saturday or Sunday it was to get two shows in, so we're doing it like this tonight. So if you guys are with us normally, obviously Banks is on the other side of the table from me, and this is a little more lively. But I think with everything that we've got to talk about, brother, it is going to be a lively conversation tonight anyway.
I mean, I think this is just going to have to happen sometimes, and we've got a little bit of like a slightly put together plan, but I'm sure there's going to be just some random stuff. You said that I needed to address what's behind me here.
I was going to say for everybody who's for the first time tuning in, sees this on YouTube. Obviously, they wouldn't hear it through the podcast there, but he has a Larry McDonald sign up behind him from his campaign down here in the Georgia 7th District in 1980. Boy, what
Well,
year?
no, it'd be 1974.
70, okay, I was going to say, it's even earlier than that. So early 70s, and it says McDonald, Democrat, U.S. Congress, for God's sakes. What is that about, Banks?
So Larry McDonald was one of the only Liberty congressmen from Georgia back in the day. And I have a special tie to him because my dad went to Europe after his plane fell. I shouldn't say that, was shot down.
Yeah.
That's not even a conspiracy, guys. That's actually what happened. He was on an airliner from Korea and flew. It was kind of close to the Russian airspace, and I believe it's two Russian fighter planes shot the airplane down. Him and hundreds of other people died. But my dad went to Europe after that happened to meet with people who supported Larry, and that's where he met my mom. And so there's a whole connection there. And my friend Michael was kind enough to find that sign for me because his father-in-law was best friends with Larry. So just a whole bunch of connections. And it's just proof that it doesn't matter if you're a Democrat or Republican. These days, it's pretty hard to find a Liberty Democrat. I have yet to find one in current existence. But back then, the Democrats were the conservative ones. I guess the Republicans too. I'm not exactly sure about all the history, but he was a Liberty congressman. It just happened to be a Democrat.
Yeah.
And there's a really cool story, actually, for those who know Ron Paul, which I imagine is a lot of the audience has at least heard of him. When Ron Paul decided to run for office, he called Larry, 1972-ish, I think, and said, "Hey, Larry, I'm going to run for Congress here in Texas. What party should I run as? Because you're a Democrat, and here it's more Republican." And Larry said, "It doesn't matter. Run the party you think you're going to win, and then just support liberty and the Constitution."
That's right.
So as much as it might seem weird today, Larry was a wonderful man, and I think if he was alive today, he would be maybe still a Democrat, probably a Republican, maybe an independent, who knows, but regardless.
Or maybe a libertarian. Dirty, awful libertarians out there.
Oh, I forgot about this guy.
Oh, man. Banksy, yeah, the McDonald story is a pretty fascinating story. I think especially when you hear it from a lot of the guys over at the JBS, the John Birch Society, and their connections to them, and I think I met a lot of those people through you, and just some really pretty amazing people out there.
Yeah, shout out to Evan Mulch. I think it's episode 27-ish. It's between 20 and 30.
God,
He came on the
really?
show and we had an awesome conversation.
Yeah, pretty amazing, man. And Evan is out of South Carolina. He's obviously, I think, the regional coordinator. Sorry about if I'm butchering your title up there, but for the Southeast out of the JBS. But at any rate, we have an episode where we want to talk about faith and politics a little bit. We want to talk about some happenings that are going on. I want to answer some questions, and we're just going to do this kind of as a free-for-all, and maybe we'll even name the show Winging It one way or another there.
Ooh,
So,
I like that.
but before we get started, Banksy, quick little thing, and I think it pertains to this campaign as well, but we started a new dojo tonight for jiu-jitsu. And for you guys tuning in for the first time, my kids have all been doing jiu-jitsu since they were about 3 years old. And we, to change, dojos, it's a kind of a big deal, especially when kids are young. They're not always comfortable in doing things and making new friends. My kids are pretty social though, so not that big a deal. And on the way home, it was a really great talk, especially with my oldest, Jackson. I've said it a million times. The kid is just born to do jiu-jitsu. I mean, he's great at it. And so when we walked in tonight, there were a couple kids in there that he had been, probably 3 or 4 actually, that he had faced previously in tournaments and had beat. And so, the chatter begins, and you can just see him having a good time talking to these guys. And he's 8 years old. So he doesn't know names or anything like that, but there's a reputation there. And so the instructor, Derek, I'll tell you what a fantastic organization he's running down there too. They had so much fun, but at the end of it, walked out, hey, great to be here. Thank you very much. And thanks for coming in and all that fun stuff. And so as we're riding home tonight, I had the I don't know, that place where you're a dad, right? You're a dad, and you get to have one of those conversations where you point something out to your kid and get to praise him at the same time. And reputation was kind of the lesson tonight, right? Reputation is when, for Jackson, and I had to inform him, I said, hey man, you've been doing this since you were about 3 years old, and for 5 years to turn in all the hard work and the just busting your butt, the sweat, the sore muscles, the joints, the headaches, the bloody noses or scratches and scars and everything else that you go through in this sport to achieve something, right? And had you been unsuccessful in the ring, when you walked in there, your reputation would have been something different. Had you done nothing at all, your reputation would have been something different. Had you won and been a jackass about winning, your reputation would have been something different. But tonight, when you came into this place, your reputation preceded you. And it was because of the amount of training, the amount of hard work, and the absolutely professional sportsmanship that you've always displayed when what you've done. And I asked him, how did that feel? How did it feel to walk into a place and not only have the Derek, who is the guy that's running the dojo, excited about having you there, like really excited, but the kids also were excited that you were there, and it was really just something cool. And you should have seen, like, his face just lit up. He was all smiles, and he's like, man, it felt really, really good. And I said, here's the big lesson, man. In all of this, it's hard work and conducting yourself in a professional manner, above board, in all cases, whether you're winning, whether you're losing, whatever it is. That will stick with you for the rest of your life. And it's already started. For 5 years, you've already put in the work and the effort, and now you have a reputation. And that reputation, son, unfortunately, can be ruined with one big mistake. I said, doesn't seem fair, does it? And he said, no, it doesn't. And I said, I need you to remember that, because you've already got something going that's really great. Now, if you want to continue that, you're going to have to continue to work as hard as you have. You're going to have to continue to conduct yourself in that fashion. And, if you continue to do that, good things will come. And I think it's relevant in terms of what's going on here, especially with us and this venture that we're on, man, to enter into politics again, to see the response and this overwhelming outpouring from the audience, the people that have been with us since the very beginning of the last campaign, and to have the infectious nature of people saying good things, even that we've disagreed with, is unbelievable. I can't tell you, over the past, 48 hours now, since really announcing and officially being out there, the overwhelming support, the encouragement, the good vibes from people that I have even vehemently disagreed with on, constitutionality and policy and the role of the federal government, the state government, and the local governments, who have come out and said, good luck, I'm with you, you got my vote, here's some money, whatever it is, has been, I am tickled to death, Banksy. And I would be remiss if I didn't say something about you in all of this, because without the other 50% who sits at the other side of the table, this doesn't happen. So hats off to you. I know you never take your hat off, but it is one of those things where it is what an incredible moment to be part of history and to be in there fighting for liberty, man. It's unbelievable to have this kind of reputation after 3.5 years or whatever it's been. Incredible, Banks.
Yeah, especially after saying all the things you said on this podcast. I mean, I'm kind of surprised, actually. I'm kidding. There's something really. So what politics does, and I guess it's probably one of the reasons I hate politics. For those who are new, hating politics, I still love the goal, but the actual idea that there should be people at the top who have so much say over our lives, it's just very disgusting, and that leads to like the consequences of that, like the consequences of this idea leads to other horrible negative consequences.
Yeah.
The fighting, the hating, just all that. But there's one thing that if you pay attention to, I think it would bring solace to most people. And of course, there's other forces being pushed. All the narratives of Democrat against Republican, all the narratives of having to wheel and deal and do quid pro quos. Haha, that's such a funny term right now. But I think that if people, I think deep down, like you said, like the reputation never leaves you. And that's what principles allow you to operate in an area where you can always be sure of yourself. You can always be sure of what the right thing to do is. I understand that there's times when we can lose sight of that, but if you're following the principle, you might not be able to make you might not even be able to make a convincing argument to almost anybody of why you should be doing what you're doing, or why you don't want to do what might be expected of you in political ways. But it doesn't make it any less true. What is the best thing to do in a campaign to win? Well, is winning a principle just intrinsically by itself? No. So why would that be something that would dictate a eternal reputation? It's just not possible. And so you can come up with a million scenarios, and even that is a little bit silly sometimes, because you can't necessarily know what would have happened in another scenario. Imagine we didn't have principles. Imagine how crazy that could make somebody. Now, there are some people like Gary Vee, new people. We mention Gary Vee all the time, and I'm a big fan. And he says, hey, you just can't think about what the other options would have been because you're in the past and you don't know. You could be super successful, make $1 billion, and because of that, you're taking a plane to Australia one day to go on a super expensive vacation, and the plane crashes and you die. So becoming a billionaire might not be the best thing. But if you're not Gary Vee and you can't put things into perspective that way, and on top of that, there's no principles, I could see how people would go crazy. And so the only thing that seems like a reliable source of sanity seems to have principles. And just tell yourself, well, and they're very simple, so it's not hard to tell yourself that's wrong and that's right, and I'll do the right things, and that's the only way I know that I can sleep at night.
Yeah.
And that other people will at least regard me in the most important facets of life. Because I know there's a million politicians who have gotten things done, but at what cost?
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah. I mean, if you're sacrificing principle where the ends justify the means, you're probably doing it wrong, man. And I say probably, you're doing it wrong for sure. And I'm glad we don't have to be there, man. I'm glad, and for the new people out there, peace, liberty, and free markets. Those are what we think of, what we hound here on this show as principles. And maybe it's good time to go over that. We believe that peace, and I think most people believe in peace because they don't walk around stabbing each other, shooting each other. Some people mad dog the crap out of you in a parking lot or in a gun store or whatever. But at the same time, the idea of peace is one that is resounding and helps to lift the human condition. That's why it is one of our principles. Liberty, obviously, individual liberty, the ability to answer to nobody, as long as you're not hurting anybody, as long as you're not taking their stuff. And that individual liberty, whatever you want to do, as long as you're in those confines, we think you should be able to do it. And the last one's free.
As long as you will bear the responsibility of your actions.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Thank you for that caveat. As long as you're going to bear the responsibility for your actions, you should have all the individual liberty you want. Last one, but definitely not least, is free markets. The freedom of association and transactions, the ability to go out and do what business you want to do with anybody you want to do it without the government coming in, putting their hand in your pocket, or telling you how to conduct that business, especially if nobody is going to get hurt, right? So those are what we talk about in terms of principles. We kind of church it up a little bit sometimes, or tone it down and tend whatever kind of audience we're working with. But for kids, it's don't hurt people, don't take their stuff, man. Start teaching that there's no invisible line where that doesn't confer into adulthood. It's just that's what we teach here, non-aggression principle and things like that. And so, on top of Austrian economics, I think. That's kind of what we do here in a nutshell on the rebellion. But boy,
everything gets analyzed through that one single lens, and then on top of that, you have things like the Constitution, which, imperfect as it is, serves for at least it's what the politicians and law enforcement take an oath to, and the military. So that's kind of important if they're bound by that by their own voluntary action.
Yeah, great tool to use.
But it is also a pretty good framework and has some amazing ideas in it.
Yeah, absolutely. But let's get into our faith in politics first, yeah? What
sure.
you want to get into?
So this idea came to me from one of our friends of the podcast, Mr. Hunter Hill. He is a public figure, so I don't think he'll mind. He's got a potential podcast in the works. And what's our advice on it, by the way, Shane?
Oh, good.
After the campaigns, we need to make time for that. But he runs a Facebook group, and he asked a question the other day, a poll on Facebook. He said, does religion have a place in politics? Yes, no, or depends? And we had to elaborate if we took depend. And I stared at that for a good 5 minutes, and I thought of saying no, because if you deep down in logic, I think that religion and ideas, they're all the same. Your religion is the ideas you hold, and so ideas, yes, because ideas do have a place in politics. But then I tried to think about the intention of his question and him meaning the basis of each religion, because the ideas that are in religion are not owned by one or another religion. They're owned just by society at large. So those details about each religion maybe don't have a place in politics. And then the more I thought about it, the more I thought, well, it's probably something that should be elaborated on. And how better to elaborate than for you and I to talk. So what's your opinion on that, Shane?
Oh,
yes,
boy,
no?
we're going to break people in softly with a esoteric, religious, faith-based type of, boy, Hunter, thanks for doing this, man. This is, you guys are going to get, for the first-time listeners here, and maybe even some of the long-time listeners, I think maybe some of these conversations are going to have a little bit of a shock for you. But I hope I hope you get something out of it. My thought. Let's define some things first, right? Because I think there is a place in politics for your faith. I don't think there's a place in politics for religion. And I say that because first and foremost, I think the state is a religion in and of itself. It's got deities that people worship and people and places and monuments. And I think that is all an incredibly awful thing. I think the religion of the state, where you become a heretic and people call you racist and fascist and Nazis and homophobes and all that kind of stuff if you just don't agree with them. I think that's an awful thing. And so the religion of the state itself is already one of those things that I believe is flawed from the very get-go, especially since it's predicated on the use of force. And what I mean by that is, anytime a government can indebt you, it can tax you and then enslave you to pay those taxes. And so when it does that, the ends, once again, justifying the means, I think are totally turned on their head. And I don't believe in things like that. So I do think there's a place for, well, let me back up. Religion. I do hear this all the time that, America was built on a Christian, foundation. Maybe there's some truth that a lot of the people that basically framed the country were of a Christian denomination, one way or another. You agree, Banks, so far?
Yeah, I mean, it's historical fact that a lot of the founding fathers were Christians and believed in God and so forth. I think the definition of religion is, I think that it's useful to put a distinction between religions, which in the terms of more of the organization, and religion in the terms of more of the ideas.
Yeah. So, and that's my piece is I'll call the ideas faith, and I will call religion kind of more of the brick and mortar where, there is basically a holy book or holy scriptures and things like that kind of, steer people one way or another, that, where a Christian will subscribe to, Christian religions, Hindu, and so forth and so on, right? Like that's kind of where I think the definition of religion lies. Would you agree with that?
I think that it's such a broad term, and I'm sure there's an official definition. I could look it up and I could read it, but I think that that's the reason it's cool to talk about it. I think that so many people would have different ways of seeing it. Some people would be very offended that potentially that you would call a religion just the basics, and they would think the religion is the whole part of it. And some people don't have much what's the word I'm looking for? Much tolerance for people who believe in other religions. So I think talking about what we think it is pretty important, and not jumping to conclusions when people talk. I know, for example, you use the word faith a lot, and so it's good to understand that you think faith is more based on the ideas.
Yeah. So
I would my personal definitions would be about the same. Faith is more the ideas. And religion is more how it's organized.
Okay, yeah. And so while you were talking, I pulled up the actual definition. It's obviously a noun. The belief in and worship of a superhuman controlling power, especially a personal god or gods. It goes on to say a particular system of faith and worship, a pursuit or interest to which someone ascribes supreme importance. So I don't disagree with that. Like I think there's one word that pops out at me, and it's the system part, right? It's basically that's what I think of when I think of religion. I think of an organization of many people that are basically, for lack of a better term, following a text or a script or a some sort of practice that's written down that is passed from generation to generation.
So let's get an example then, because that's where things come up, right?
Sure.
When somebody votes on something, let's say a politician, a congressman, for example, votes on something, and he says that it's based on his faith in XYZ religion. Do you think that is good, bad, doesn't matter? Whatever other qualifiers we're going to put on that?
I think it comes down to whoever's saying it, because when Nancy Pelosi talks to me about her religion of Catholicism, and she is 180 degrees in separation from it, as a once Catholic out there, I have issues with it. I don't, and I guess this brings me to my statement. I don't believe there is place in government, so to speak, for religion. And that's probably the reason why. Because here's the thing is, it's like anything else. When your oath is to uphold a system in terms of a constitution, right? That's what everybody expects you to do. Now, if you have an outside influence that's going to come in here into that system that you've already sworn an oath to, and now that's going to take precedence over what you've already told people you have put the importance on in terms of governance, I think there is a problem with that.
So what would not be an outside influence? Like, what if somebody becomes a congressman, votes on a bill and says, I voted on this based on the principles of the Rebellion podcast?
Ah, very good. Is it in line, first and foremost, with your oath? And I'm not saying that everything, like obviously IP, the post office, things like that, I'm not down with, right? And so there are things that I think, I guess maybe supersede. But if you're being technical, you still got to go through. If you want to change in the right way, you still got to go through the amendment process. I think I don't think there is a place for religion. But I definitely understand that there will always be those things affecting people's decisions.
So I find it very difficult to make a difference between where people get their ideas. And I don't find it consistent if people analyze one thing, because religions have a sordid history, we'll put it nicely, of doing good things and doing bad things, and having lots of actors. And so there's not just one lens to look at it through at the same time. And so I really have a problem when people hold religious views, what they deem religious views, because you can also be, it's a religious view that abortion is bad. Well, for some religions, I'll say. And for some people in specific religions, let's face it. Complicated.
The state's killed 70 million babies, so that religion is pretty bad, right?
Yeah, but there are also people who would say that they don't believe in a supernatural God, because that's the definition, or multiple gods, and would also have the same opinion. I know some of those people.
Yeah.
I only need to know one to prove it. And so I find it a quick cop-out, and I wonder how people get over judging an idea less valuable, or on the other side of things, more valuable, just because it comes from a religion.
Huh. No, this is a very cowboy. What an esoteric subject we're on here. I do believe, though, that when you brought up kind of this idea of faith and politics, I think there's a different layer that I think about in terms of faith, because I think faith is a good thing. I think cultures that will put more emphasis on faith and action and good works, and I know good is a subjective word, but there is this chord inside most people. When you do something quote unquote good, there's this thing that maybe you're even proud of, right? You start to have a little different energy, a little different vibration, or whatever it is. You glow a little bit, you smile, you're probably happier towards most of the people that you come in contact with, versus when you do something bad, right? Like your murders, your rapes, assault, coercion, robbery, like real crime, like natural crime, right? Like those type of things. I think people, that strikes a different chord, and they act differently, and they have things that they're wrestling with, and that the idea of faith, though, in getting into things like this and sustainment and just nurturing something that can't be seen, it can't be touched, that does affect your outlook just the way you carry yourself through life. Like, I think there is a supreme importance for faith in especially in this realm right now. I mean, always, but especially right now.
No, I definitely agree. So what do you believe personally? If you want to share, which you don't have to share.
What do I believe in terms of what the mysteries of the universe?
Yeah.
Oh, man, boy, here we go. I don't know that we've really sat down and had this conversation, Banksy. This will be a first, and a little bit, right? But like, we're always evolving human beings. I don't believe that I know, and I don't believe that anybody knows. And so I have a hard time saying that, one particular set of beliefs that have been written down and translated across, I don't know, over 2,000 plus years now is the one way to find divinity. And so for me, I see something more complicated, and I see something that is still as beautiful, if not more beautiful to me, in terms of the way space and time and this universe, and right down to the atoms that everything is made of. I see a design, and I think it is spectacular. It is one of those things that is so mind-blowingly beautiful when you actually divorce yourself from the buildings and the technology and just all of the man-made things. Now, I'm not saying there can't be beauty in man-made things, but when you divorce yourself from those things and you look at how life functions and how crazy it is that we're on this rock that's spinning through space following a star at God knows how many miles an hour, and everything just kind of works, right? Like the fact that you have this crust where people walk around and they live after God knows how long, right? Because I'm not one of those people that believes that 6,000 years ago, poof, hey, there's human beings. I think as much. And the thing is I don't know. We could be seated here by a more advanced species, for God's sakes. I don't know. What I think is fascinating is that, and that's where I think faith, like my faith, comes from, and that's that there is a designer, there is an architect, all of this. It looks very planned to me. It looks so planned in such a way that is so much bigger than our tiny little minds can conceive, that I think that through history, religion has kind of been one of those things like a fairy tale for adults to help them feel better about what they do in life, that has kind of simplified the idea of a much bigger, more beautiful God out there. That's what I think. And so to see the world in more of a, I say the world, the universe, time and space and all that fun stuff in that way, I still give, I still have prayer, and I still have conversations with what I think is God. But it is much different than when I was a boy, and even 10, 15 years ago. It's much different than that. And so I think, this everlasting cycle that we're in as human beings, this short blip of a life that we have, is even more important when you look at it from that perspective. It is, you got a really short time in this thing called eternity that you're already part of, right? And to be there and to be able to leave legacy, for God's sakes, even if it's, it'll run out with the human species, maybe, who knows? What an amazing gift And I think that's what, drives me in terms of, the peace part. It's like, listen, man, there are people all over this world that don't understand peace. They've never seen peace. And I also think that, I've said it a million times. I think that there is genius in everybody for the most part. I think there's passion in everybody. And that idea that, left alone to their own passions and desires and genius, those people will contribute to the human species and lift it more than if they are controlled and told what to do by the state. So I don't know, man. That's kind of my cheesy, very, I don't know. It's different. I know, maybe some people think it. Maybe some people think I'm crazy for even thinking such a thing. But yeah, man, that's where I'm at. And so I think, we've got a real duty to treat people as if they're pretty special.
Well, I like cheesy stuff. But I've got to admit that there was a little bit of a plan to my question. I assumed correctly that you would have a very eloquent, kind of esoteric, but kind of built together framework, right? Because you've talked about this somewhat before. You did better than I could have anticipated in helping me make my next point by illustrating that you have a framework, right?
Right.
Like you have some kind of framework. It doesn't there's obviously tons of religions out there, and there's different types in each one that has like a bigger name, Christians, Hindus, whatever it is. But you have your own framework you've kind of devised over 40 years of being on this earth.
Careful, I've still got a couple days left. Actually, this is going to air Friday morning, so yeah, no, happy birthday to me. 40 years.
You're kind of living in the past, traveling in the future. It's kind of cool.
Weird.
And so, if we just talk about logic, who is to prove, and how would they prove that what you just explained is not perfectly true? And if that's the case, and statistics would say that, or probability would say it's probably not, but
right.
But you never know. Why would one set of ideas constructed around whatever? My ideas are a little bit, man, it's not often I say this kind of stuff, but a little bit more mainstream, I guess, when it comes to religion and being Christian. I go to church and all that kind of stuff. I joke sometimes with my pastor that, some people go to church with me might think I'm a heathen because of the dissecting things and some tangents that I kind of in your vein, which is I don't know parts. But why would that, if you were right, why would that be any different than any other construction of another human mind of what the truth is? Because it's all about the truth, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're trying to, I would imagine most people who believe in something are hoping, or trying to hope sometimes. There's a lot of emotions there to find the truth. And that just brings me back to politics, that as much as it might be frustrating to feel that somebody has an opinion that is wrong because of religion, because it's so easy to put a finger on it, I think we need to start seeing past that. There's a lot of other things, and you mentioned the most important one, which is government. And tons of people, for whatever, try not to be judgmental, silly reasons, emotional reasons, for some of them stupid reasons, reasons out of ignorance, believe the default that is the state and jump to conclusions that are very often wrong, at least as much as people who are more religious, and I actually think more at this point. And so I really think that we need to do a better job, and I'm being quite judgmental here, at not focusing on what box we can put one idea or another in.
Or a person.
First reason, because we've already proved that somebody who is religious can have one idea, and somebody who is absolutely not religious in their own definition can have the same idea. But also because those ideas can be shaped individually and still mean something wherever they came from, because everything we believe comes from somewhere, right here in the little brain. Mine's protected, so I don't know why you guys aren't protecting yours. It seems important. Okay, this whole argument is making a very good basis for wearing hats. And yeah, as much as it is frustrating, I think we do ourselves a disservice to not recognize the idea, however we think that person came to it, instead of just pushing it back as being stupid. Or there's lots of people who think you're not allowed to have that idea. There's lots of people who get angry that a politician will vote if he's a Christian against abortion and say that that means he should be disqualified.
Sure. No.
So that's kind of where I was coming from. I've got one other thing when we're done with this, but if you have any other thoughts on religion and politics.
Yeah, I let's see, where do I go? Faith. Faith is part of what I wanted to hit on next, I think, right? Like, so the faith part in politics, I think, can be one of your greatest allies. And if I'm skipping ahead, Banks, of where you want to go with this conversation.
No, the only thing I have left is a poem I want to read,
okay.
And I'll explain why.
Okay. Yeah, so faith is one of those things where, man, life is life, man, and this world is going to continue to spin whether we're here or not. But here's the one thing that I have found that helps me anyway, and you take it or leave it, free advice, or you could you know what 2 cents are for. You can leave them behind if you don't need them, right? So, at any rate, faith in terms of politics, I think is a fantastic thing. I think it's one of those things that I wish more people were in tune with, in terms of the idea that no matter what, at the end of the day, things are going to be okay, right? Things are going to either work out or they're going to be okay. And it is the idea that you are looking for where you need to be. And so this might get, I don't know, a little more esoteric, and it may come, a little bit more from, the Christian background that I was raised in. And that idea is, hey, there's something bigger than me going on here. There are forces that I cannot explain. There are things that may be happening where, I will be in a certain spot at a certain time to do a certain thing no matter what. And I don't necessarily believe in predestination, but I do understand that sometimes coincidence just seems a little too far-fetched to be coincidence. And so I've always kind of put stock in this idea that if you look at life and you find at least one simple thing to be grateful for, you're going to have a much better outlook on the next thing that you need to do, or whatever is happening to you at the same time. Because you can be in the worst possible situation and you can still find good in it. And for example, for me, it's not hard. Obviously, having been in some of the worst places on earth, in combat, and seeing war firsthand in places like Fallujah and Najaf and Diwania and other parts of Iraq, to where you just don't have anything. Guys are wounded, guys are dying, whatever the case is. And to know that you're going to have to go through more and more and more of this kind of thing. To be able to sit there and have a good, positive mental attitude. PMA is what we used to say. You can check your PMA. Get your PMA right. Positive mental attitude. Okay. Positive mental attitude. Your OODA loop. That space between your ears that only you control. That idea that you find something good. I don't care if you got cheese instead of peanut butter for your MRE that morning or afternoon or night, or if you just got to eat that day, or the fact that you even got through the day, or the fact that you're standing in the middle of the day, or before you leave what's called the line of departure. Those type of things where you have something, whether it's your buddy, whether it's a sleeping bag to sleep with, whether it's just breath in your lungs, for God's sakes. Find something to be positive about. Find something. When the world seems to be crumbling around you, you find that one thing and you say, thank you. Thank you for this. And then you find something else, and you compound, and you compound, and you compound, and before you know it, you're thankful for things all over and around you, and just things that you can't even touch or smell or like. And I think that idea, the idea of being thankful and saying, listen, even though I'm in this terrible place, I'm still being sustained. And to take that forward to say, hey, listen, there's going to be brighter times. There's going to be a way ahead. There's a path for me. I need to stop focusing on whatever doors have slammed in my face, and I need to find the one that's open. And I'll tell you, this is something I don't share with a lot of people. That's part of my part of my prayer set, man. Is I ask to see the door that's open. I ask to see the path before me that I'm supposed to be on. And I'll tell you, I mean, that's one of the things where I know when I'm off. I know when I'm staring at that stupid door that's been slammed in my face over and over and over again, and I've got to catch myself sometimes and go, hey, dummy, you're looking at the wrong thing. You are not in control of all of this, and you need to figure it out a different way, right? And so I think faith in politics in that sense, where you can be yourself, and you can look at situations from a different perspective than I think most people can look at a situation, and you can make better decisions, whether it's your engagement with other people, whether it's the way you react to something, whether it's something that you have to act on. I think you can react in a much more positive, better way if you're thinking in those types, in that type of way. And I'll credit the Marine Corps a lot with that, man. The idea that it could always be worse because you've seen it and you've been there and you've done it, or you've heard stories about how it was worse. That suffering has helped me out greatly in my life. So that's where I think faith belongs in politics, is the ability to say things could be worse. I need to treat people better. I need to come up with better solutions, and I need to engage on a different level or find a different path with a more positive attitude.
Well, that I definitely recognize more from you. I know that helped us a lot in the first campaign, and I've definitely heard you say this quite a few times about how it sustains you. So yeah, I think the ideas should remain in politics, and I think faith is a awesome tool for life in general, meaning politics as well. Mm-hmm. And politics is part of life, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So one of the intersection of things that made me think about this originally is because of my personal faith. I don't really talk about my personal faith much, so I'm surprised I came up with this idea. But I see a lot of what is in the religion that I pay attention to, at least, which is, the Bible, the Christian religion. Again, some people might call me a heathen because of my opinion that I'm not sure of all the things, and that's fine. But there's a lot of things that bring me solace. I believe in in some of the fundamentals that everybody deserves forgiveness and can acquire redemption, and that good is what people should do in life. And so I've got this poem here. It's actually, I couldn't find it, and I remember that I posted it as part of your campaign way back when. And I just see it as such a parallel to what our plan is in politics, right? For peace, liberty, and free markets. And I'm not sure I'm going to read the whole thing. It's pretty long, and I know that my audio is not the best here since I'm out of studio. But I want to read it and then maybe stop and analyze how much, even though it talks about God and Christianity, how much it is in parallel with kind of what you talked about with faith. So it's called Soldier of the Cross. So right there, it's all to do with religion. They're evoking Jesus on the cross.
Why do you hate the Jews, Banks?
What?
I said, why do you hate the Jews, Banks? You anti-Semite.
Boy, I hope that doesn't get taken out of context. Though those are my favorite type of jokes, I've got to admit, and you know that very well.
I do.
But it's called Soldier of the Cross. Nay, tell me not of dangers dire that lie in duty's path. A warrior of the cross can feel no fear of human wrath. Where the Prince of Darkness holds his earthly reign abhorred, sword of the Spirit, thee I draw, and battle for the Lord. I go to break the chains that bind the eerie mind, and give the freedom that I feel to all of humankind. To all of human, but oh, I wear no burnished steel, and seek no gory field. My weapon is the word of God, his promise is my shield. And thus equipped, why need I fear? Though hosts around me rise, there is a power in gospel truth no heathen can despise. And he who boldly fights with that will through more perils wade than the vain warrior trusting to his bright Damascus blade. No blast by land or sea can shake the purpose of my soul. The tempest of 1,000 winds may sweep from pole to pole. Yet still, serene and fixed in faith, all fear of death I scorn. I know it is my Father's work. He's with me in the storm. Then let me go where duty calls, where God himself commands, bearing the banner of his Son to dark and distant lands. And if the high and holy cause require my early fall, a recreant he who would not die for him who died for all. So that's actually the whole poem. A poem flows so well that I couldn't stop myself. But all throughout, I'm sure you can make the connection to the fight for liberty or just the fight for ideas, right? You could insert bad ideas in here if you wanted to. But it's all throughout, I just see the parallels with fighting for whatever ideas you think are correct. I wish everybody had the perfect ideas, and actually then we wouldn't have politics because we'd all live together in unicorn land. But you've got the part where it talks about the vain warrior trusting to his bright Damascus blade. And he's implying instead of ideas, right? Instead of principles. And in this case, the right principles, hopefully. And that just makes me think of politics in the sense that you've got the politicians who they're talking about the money and the power plays and just how many people they can convince. How are they convincing them? Oh, it doesn't matter. Just how many people they can convince to do something so they can have political power. When the ultimate goal for those who, again, being very judgmental or doing it right, is to trust in the ideas. So,
yeah, I mean, there's one part I don't want to gloss over, and that's war for the state, whether it's religion or whatever, right? Like I abhor the idea. The idea, though, that is so nicely woven in there that I don't want to gloss over is the idea of having a higher power that wants people to be free. And I thought that was a very beautiful part of what you read there. I think I'd seen something earlier in the week, and I talked about it with somebody throughout this campaign already now, that that resonated with me because I saw this thing and I said, something to the effect of the people are born with unique gifts and passions and genius, like I kind of talked about and alluded to earlier. And in a free world, people are never going to be equal. But if people are equal, they're never going to be free, right? And so, or they're not free. And that idea that the natural state and what is supposed to be is people are free. And there's that spirit that I think kind of burns inside all of us, as if we're in a place where we can help people recognize liberty and fight for liberty and do it as peacefully as possible, to where you're overwhelming minds and culture so so blood doesn't have to be spilled. I think that's a novel idea in this, in the world, and maybe even throughout history, because you look at what just happened, even over in Europe. Great example, man, is that with Brexit just seceded from a more powerful government, and it happened, mostly, and I know it's not quite finished yet, but it happened without a drop of blood. That's that is an anomaly in this world. You know, and that's an amazing thing. And I hope that type of idea continues and picks up and gains steam. The idea that populations change and ideas and cultures change, and that if you want to be part of some other culture, you can go be part of some other culture. And with that, if you don't want to be part of a culture, you don't have to be part of a culture, right? You should have, and you do have that right to associate with whoever the heck you want to associate with, or disassociate with anybody you don't want to associate with. And that freedom and that idea of peace to be maybe even interwoven in this amazing world that we have with technology, to live in the same area as a communist or a fascist, or, you know, whatever, if that's the means that they think, you know, is best for their lives, cool, man. As long as I don't have to be part of it, I don't care. As long as you are not pointing a gun at me and forcing me one way or another to either give you my property or my money or my life or anything like that, I'm fine with it. I don't care. But that freedom in this world, in that this new kind of evolution to where we can live in harmony and separately and respect each other, I think I hope that's where culture is going, and that's, I'm sure as hell, where we're trying to take it, I think.
I mean, I've made this argument before, but I think that's what most people live in, in the majority of their day. Most of our day is pretty peaceful in regard to other people. I know I spent most of my day in an office, and then I came home, and
you kill me, buddy?
In the office, there's two other people, and it was pretty peaceful. And here, there's nobody in this room, at least. My cat's out there. I can see him under the door. He's kind of aggressive sometimes. He doesn't understand the non-aggression principle. But, you know, animals are not libertarians yet. But yeah, most people live most of their day. I actually get you're really good at getting amazed at small things, Shane. I smile sometimes because driving can be frustrating. Okay, mm-hmm. People don't get out of the left lane when somebody's behind them. And that one, like I want to make a sticker that's reversed and on the front bumper, so people can see it in their rearview mirror, and it says "Get out of the left lane." But after I try to remind myself, and I'm pretty good at it, I'll think, well, maybe that person's having a bad day. Maybe their parent just died.
Distracted.
Maybe something. And I'll calm down. And when I'm calm and I'm driving, especially when there's cars coming both ways and people are going pretty fast, kind of weaving through traffic, there's some times where I just look in awe, get a little distracted, which is not good while driving. And it seems almost impossible. Somebody 500 years ago would not have thought that it was possible to go that fast and for there not to be complete chaos and disarray and death and destruction, right? And it would be very easy for one person to cause disarray and death and destruction. Sadly, it does happen when there's accidents. But you see these cars coming both ways, going in the same direction, weaving in and out of traffic. And for the most part, even though there are accidents, I don't know what the number is, 99% of the time, every single day, all over the world, people are just getting along and protecting themselves, which happens to protect other people at the same time. And I find that just riveting. Maybe I like driving more than the average person, but it makes me smile because it just shows that it is so possible. There's an experiment that was done in Finland. And then I'll stop about cars because I know this is a little bit weird. But there's an experiment that was done in Finland, I believe. And it's they put a camera on top of a four-way stop. And it used to have a red light. And they just took away the red light and they just put signs that said yield. And traffic worked better without the red light. Like traffic was faster. There were no accidents than with a red light. And people just made it work because, of course, who wanted to get into an accident? Nobody. Now, of course, there's outliers out there, but in this case, the outliers are pretty damn low, and that's why they're called outliers anyways. You discard them. I just find that beautiful, and I think it's a representation of how. And there's tons of other examples, right? I don't know. On the internet, there's a billion transactions happening a day that don't involve credit card fraud stealing your identity or something like that.
No, nobody ever looks at that. I mean, the modern miracles of transaction within human society, right? I mean, government for any of it, for really. I mean, for God's sakes, we've done the whole trade thing. I don't think we need to relive that episode because it was more of a long episode. But no, I think it ties up a really nice conversation on faith and religion. Hunter, I hope we answered your question. Banks, I put the invite out there to Hunter, man. Come on the show, man. Come over here, hang out, ask us whatever you want, because I'm sure there's a bunch of other people out there and who would like to either podcast or is trying to get started in it. And I'll tell you right now, like, I don't mind competition. I love having people in the space who are talking about this kind of stuff. And if you can, you clean up a good sound and put something good together, I think it's better than, kind of sifting through some of the stuff that's kind of half-assed out there, for lack of a better term. I find it more enjoyable. And I'll tell you right now, if I could listen to, some of my buddies who are out there, especially, in a different generation, man, that'd be pretty awesome.
No, I definitely agree. We do have a plan one day, and I know that we've probably told our listeners a million times all the plans that we have, and they're like, these plans are not happening as fast as they said they would, and I don't see how they could even accomplish all these plans in one lifetime anyway. But we do have a plan to make some kind of video podcast, maybe both, about doing podcasting, the equipment, how it works, like what our process is. And I actually just thought that it might make our process better because we might get some feedback and be like, hey, dumbos, why are you doing it this way? You should do it that way. But we'd like to share our process so that those who would like to get involved in doing this type of stuff. I think there's tons of space for people to talk about the best ideas that there are in the world: peace, liberty, free markets, all that corny stuff. Mm-hmm. So we do have a plan on doing that. And before we kind of start wrapping up, I do appreciate people indulging our weirder conversations that are less about the daily happenings and more about, balancing things off the wall.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like my voice in this very, very empty room.
Yeah, we're going to have to get you some sound dampening in there. Do you want to move on to the next subject?
What was the next subject again?
Well,
I forgot. I know I mentioned the coronavirus. If you want to talk about that, we can.
Yeah, it's kind of a current event that's going on in the world. Banks, question: do you believe the coronavirus is really a threat to mankind, or do you think this is a manufactured piece? And why would you think it's manufactured?
My default is that I think that it is a real thing. I don't know how it came to be. And while I think it's interesting to think about all the possibilities, I don't think it's the most important thing at this point. It'd be good to know. I don't think we'll ever know. I mean, that's my take on conspiracies in general. For new listeners, is a bunch of them are true, a bunch of them are not true. And unless you're passionate about it, about one particular conspiracy or maybe all of them, it's almost impossible to have an efficient use of time in trying to figure out which one is true or not. I think it is a real thing. I don't think it's complete fabrication wherever it came from. And I think that there is a threat because I'm pretty sure some people have died from it, and that would make it a threat in of itself.
Yeah, I don't even know exactly what the numbers are. I have been watching it. Obviously, I travel the world quite a bit and am stuck in, basically flying aluminum tubes with people and recirculators for too many hours at a time. And so, I keep an eye on it. And I love the idea of conspiracy in this realm, especially with this, because I think it's one of those really neat things where fiction and reality and conspiracy and truth are really, I don't know, interwoven to lack of a better term. It goes back to the who was the quote by is you can't let any emergency go to waste, right? And
you can't let a crisis go to waste.
Yeah, basically, I think this is one of those things. Now, let me inform some of you guys out there as to some of the things that the really awful, terrible people who come up with different types of diseases out there, or trying to find cures and find a different disease. Let me clue you into some of that, because I'll tell you right now, there are genetically or lab grown type of viruses and bacteria that have been engineered and designed to affect certain traits, if you will. Okay, not a far stretch for you, Banks. You good with that so far?
No, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Okay, so I've always thought it was interesting, and now that that Donald Trump has kind of cleared the big hurdle of impeachment, last 3+ years or whatever it's been so far, god awfulness. I've said for a long time that I think that this guy, if he gets through this kind of stuff, the one thing that he has to worry about before re-election is the economy, right? If somehow, some way, the powers that be that don't want Trump in office, right? And I think there are a lot of people out there that don't want him in office, that hold some amazingly powerful positions out there. Really, really powerful. And I'm not a Trump fanboy. I'm not going to sit there and, fall over myself for the guy. And I'm definitely not one of those guys that's going to, blame him for everything either. I know, crazy. Some guy that can actually think about Trump on the issue per issue. I think that, if given the right circumstance, and this being one of those circumstances where somebody wanted to release some of those engineered type diseases to slow down the world economy so that by the end of the year, things are not going real well in quote unquote Trump's economy, they may have done something like this. And I don't put it past governments or government entities, especially the god awful damn bureaucracies, to do something like that. And the thing is
so
I'm not saying it happened. I'm just saying I don't like to rule out possibilities, right? And I think this is a very entertaining one. I think it'd make for a fantastic thriller type movie and everything else out there. I think there are those possibilities. I think, what's being said out there is, some truth. And I think hey, listen, maybe don't go to China for a while. Don't fly all over the Asian countries if you can avoid it for a while. But at the same time, I think there's a lot of people out there that will use a crisis or an emergency like this to do things politically to hurt other people. And I think some of that's also going on. So that's my 2 cents on the coronavirus. I hate that it's out there, and I hate that people are getting sick and dying from it. But I definitely think there are a lot bigger issues and even diseases out there in the world than the coronavirus.
I mean, there's obviously other diseases that kill more people, one being the flu itself.
Flu, cancer.
Like, discussing possibilities is not like not entertaining. I know I did a double negative. I like double negatives, so I'm going to continue doing them. But I don't think any of those ideas are completely impossible. I don't think it's that. I find it's funny. Apparently, the lab in China where it was at least studied, some people say maybe started, has an umbrella.
Oh, like the Umbrella Corp?
Like an umbrella logo.
Yeah.
And it's like the same as the other one. That could be fake news. I don't know. But all those things are kind of funny to put together sometimes and to think about. I doubt it's that. Like, I highly doubt it's that. But Trump had a press conference today. So this is Wednesday. You're listening to this on Friday. Wednesday evening, and it was a little bit alarming how serious they were taking it, because Trump has previously kind of downplayed it, right?
Yeah,
saying it's nothing. America's dealing with it great. He did kind of the same thing. Then they paraded Mike Pence and the head of Health and Human Services, and there's a bunch of people back to back to back, and then a doctor. And the way they were talking about it, Trump was not as slightly less confident than I feel he usually is. He uses plain words, but he used them with a lot of repetition, which made me doubt that he had much to say about it. And that might be because they're scared about something. And then they alluded to all these possibilities of, well, we think it's going to get worse in America. We're trying to get all this money to spend on this, that, and the other. And one of the journalists asked Trump if there were any plans to quarantine cities in the United States, and he answered that no, but well, of course we plan for that if it's necessary. And just a bunch of people take it seriously, and the stock market has tanked a little bit. I think it's 8% lower than last week or something.
Yeah.
I think that's the right number. Or at least it's one of the indexes. Well, one of the major indexes is down 8%. And would they have done it just for that? Like, I don't know why they would do so much and open themselves up to so much criticism if there wasn't something real there. So I just thought about it maybe too much. I live in my head a lot, but I thought about it a little bit much, and I was like, okay, well, Italy is shutting down a lot, and I have family in Europe, and they're talking about like washing your hands and staying away from people who like cough and don't put their hands in front of their mouths and so forth. Yeah. And it just made me think that I hope libertarians specifically don't discount it just because there's this whole big government response around it.
Sure. Yeah. No. Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing is really, if you're traveling and you're out there, there's things, obviously washing your hands is one of the good things. And I don't think, maybe many people that are outside the military, and I'll tell you from, being a Marine, one of the first things they make sure that you're not doing is touching your face. I tell my kids this kind of stuff all the time. Stop touching your face. Don't touch your face. Don't touch your brother's face. Don't touch your sister's face. Stop touching your freaking face. Right? Like that's a real thing. If whatever you're doing, try not to touch your face. If you got to touch your face, wash your hands first. Things like that. Outside of that, I don't know. I'm not going to discount it. I'm not, trust me, I don't want to see a plague on this earth. And like I said, I think there's some bigger things. What I do think is really, really fun though, Banks, besides the conspiracy, is the fact that they had this press conference, Trump talked, Pence came out and all that fun stuff, that the Democrats are going out of their way now to say, quote, this is a sick attempt to politicize the situation. Democrats. The irony in Democrats saying that he is politicizing the situation from the Democrats, who are the first people that jump on every dead kid that ever gets shot. Any time that ever happens, what do? They go out and they politicize that event. You want to talk about something really, really heinous and sick. That's sick. This, I think, maybe probably even within the commander-in-chief's purview in, I don't know, what is 2020 now? I mean, if we're going to have a CDC, for God's sakes, at the national level, which I don't think should exist, I think it may be worth saying, hey, this is what we are preparing for. This is what we think our plans are. It has not missed us in terms of the fact that there could be something more to this than what we know right now. And I don't think that's a terrible thing. Now, if he's going into conspiracy land, right, and he's actually going out and accusing the Democrats of saying, yeah, man, they're shutting down my economy by overblowing the situation, right, so that it'll fail and things will look worse for my numbers out there. I mean, I understand, but at the same time, it's one of those things where, boy, I don't know. If I'm one of his political advisors, I'd probably tell him, stay the hell away from that kind of thing.
No, he seems to have turned a page from, and he never did that, but he seems to have turned a page from saying that it's nothing to taking it seriously.
Yeah.
And as much as we can speculate about all the possibilities, I don't think that's one that people would want to play with that much. It's the politicizing of it is funny because I'm sure that if he didn't do anything, they'd also say he's not doing his job, and they'd politicize it too. And commenting on something being politicized as a party is kind of politicizing something.
And it will always happen for political gain, for sure.
Here's my nice little bow.
Yeah.
Okay. Everything is politicized and everything is ideas. In the same way that we talked about, or I talked about, the fact that ideas come from somewhere. So if they come from religion, it shouldn't matter.
Yeah.
What is talked about in politics is anything. Everything that you talk about in politics, and actually most of life, is politicized if it's public, right? Unless it's private and only in your brain, it's politicized. That's actually part of life. The fact that we can demonize and kind of word and message things based on what is very, very normal, which is people have ideas, and people who are in the public are saying public things, is unbelievable.
Well, as long as they're not,
how can we demonize that?
As long as they're not shoving their religion down my mouth. No, there's the vote. No. We're coming up on time here pretty soon. Anyway, we've got about 10 minutes before we hit that 1:30 mark. Banksy, what else?
Do you have any else on your mind?
I've got some things I want to tell everybody. If you're tuning in for the first time, we really appreciate you being here. You guys who are long holdovers, we really love you guys to death. But we hope you found something with the show. I hope we've given you some substance, something to think about, something to chew on. And if you have, one of the things that we ask people to do is go out there and leave us a 5-star review, maybe even a comment on whatever platform you're listening to, especially iTunes. iTunes is one of those that pushes us up in the algorithms, and it helps us to reach more and more people through culture. And so that's obviously really our main goal is to take over the world and leave everybody alone. So those 5-star reviews, they really help. Banks, I'll tell you right now, within the past, I don't know, two days, I've got a slew of questions that I would love to spend time answering at some point. We haven't ever done really an abortion show. I got that question. Where do you stand on abortion? Where do you stand on weed? Right? Marijuana, cannabis, the sticky icky, all that fun stuff. Where do you stand on borders and border security, things like that? And I'll get these things up, and we'll have a conversation, and actually go through the very specific questions on these things for you guys. I don't know, maybe for Monday's show or next Friday's show or something like that. But I did want to address.
I'm pretty sure most of those questions could be answered by reading your website, which is shanehazel.com. And some of it might not be very, very clear. It might be a little bit like you have to jump. It doesn't say specifically, this is my opinion on all these issues. But I think that's a good idea, Shane. I'm torn between a website that has every single issue.
Me too, man.
And a website that has a design and feel to it.
Well, it's just like Trump politicizing this is, oh man, there's so much there, or there's not enough there. Either way, it could be the same page and different people will see it differently, right? Like how's Shane feel about cats? Why isn't that on his webpage, right? Like that's a thing. They should be outdoor animals that survive on their no. I kid. Well, do you want me to do the normal wrap up then?
No, I mean, I guess that we can tell them, we told them about leaving a review.
Yep.
If you really like the show and we bring you a lot of value, you can go to patreon.com/rebellionpod and become a patron there. You can do it for as low as $3 a month, and we will send you stickers a few times a year. For those who don't know, if you want a certain sticker and you tell us, we'll probably make it. For the next batch, most of those are already in, but we've never had enough asks, and we've always delivered. So next time, the stickers are pretty awesome. One idea came from me, since there's not enough from you guys, because you guys are just too polite. But patreon.com/rebellionpod, it helps us pay for all we do. It helps us expand, and you get some cool swag.
Right on. Yeah, and if you got anything you want to bring to our attention, info@rebellionpod.com. Whether it's a story, a politician, somebody you want us to interview, whatever you want to bring to our attention, send it to info@rebellionpod.com. If you've got specific questions for me, you can send those to shane@shanehazel.com. I will have all that email. Like I said, shanehazel.com is my website. You can go there if you want to help make donations to the campaign. Our buddy Matt Gertler is also running down here. Banks is running his campaign. I'll tell you right now, if you're looking for Liberty campaigns down here in Georgia, these are the two. And I'll tell you right now, I'll vouch. I'll go on record right now. Matt Gertler, going to be a rock star, man. We get him through this primary. He is going to just go to D.C. and do some amazing things, I think. So outside of that, Banks, I've enjoyed this, man. Sorry it's not in person. Next time for sure. I'm sure that'll be Saturday or Sunday, but we'll figure it out off air. For the rest of you guys, we can't thank you guys enough for tuning in, for sharing this, for telling everybody you know, for answering people's questions with links to our podcast. You guys are amazing. What a phenomenal group of people. Thank you. We need a legion of you people. We need people sharing these types of things every day, multiple times a day, putting the word out there, creating the hype. You're our legion. You're our army, the peaceful army. Like I always say, this has been The Rebellion, your place for peace, liberty, free markets. We love you. We need you.
Peace.
Don't hurt people and don't take their stuff.